The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We encourage federal workers in this city to accept the very generous offer.
As the Trump administration looks to shrink the government, a controversial buyout offer has been put on pause. What the White House is saying and how Democrats are pushing back. Then, in the deadly California wildfires that rocked LA County, what a utility company is admitting about what likely sparked one of the blazes. And some iconic surf and skate inspired brands are seeing their brick and mortar stores get the boot. The factors now forcing more than 100 closures. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. The midnight deadline for federal workers to accept President Donald Trump's buyout offer has been delayed until at least Monday. This as a federal judge puts a pause in place. The administration has been urging federal employees to take the offer, which would give them 8 months of severance pay. Several officials, federal unions have sued, also urging their members not to take this deal. National correspondent Matt Gelka with the latest.
Elon Musk, we've got a message for you. You will be fired.
Democrats are ramping up their pushback against Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency. The efforts by DOGE to downsize government have led to access to multiple sensitive systems in various government agencies and an attempted purge of civilian federal workers. More than 60,000 federal employees had reportedly taken a deferred resignation offer, allowing them to resign with pay through September. A majority of the more than 2 million civilian federal workers were eligible, and they were up against a Thursday night deadline to take it or leave it and possibly face layoffs in the near future. A judge's order could now temporarily delay that decision. Many Republicans have cheered on the breakneck speed DOGE is working at.
We certainly are always concerned when there's a bull in the china shop, and that's certainly something that we're seeing here. This is going to be messy and sloppy and not pretty, but it's not going to be illegal.
But at least one Senate Republican isn't so sure about Musk's power. Maine Senator Susan Collins told reporters this week that President Trump appears to have empowered Elon Musk far beyond what I think is appropriate, and that she thought a lot of what Musk and DOGE are doing is going to end up in court. Musk's team reportedly now has access to Medicare and Medicaid records, two areas that had more than $100 billion of improper payments in 2023, according to the Government Accountability Office. The White House has defended the DOGE work to try and streamline the government.
We encourage federal workers in this city to accept the very generous offer. If they don't want to show up to the office, if they want to rip the American people off, then they're welcome to take this buyout, and we'll find highly competent individuals who want to fill these roles.
One potentially huge hurdle for the so-called buyouts is this. The government is currently funded through mid-March, and workers taking buyouts are being promised money through September. But that could all hinge on what Congress is willing to appropriate for the rest of the year. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Matt, thank you. The Office of Budget and Management, which oversees the buyouts, could have their new director in place as early as tomorrow. Right now, the Senate is finishing 30 hours of debate on the nomination of Russell Vought to become the new director of OMB. His nomination is expected to pass tonight without any Democratic support. Tonight, President Trump has said Israel will hand over Gaza to the United States after the fighting there is over and the enclave's population has been resettled elsewhere. This as he faces pushback on his brazen proposal to take over Gaza. Trump posting to social media today that no troops would be needed on the ground, but the president did not address some larger, more critical questions about where the enclave's 2.1 million war-battered civilians would go, nor whether they'd have the right to return to their homeland. One Democratic lawmaker believes the plan is simply a tactic to divert attention away from the administration's recent move to shut down USAID.
Donald Trump is doing now what he's done often in his time in leadership, which is to distract us from something else that he's doing. And the idea that we would actually seriously take over Gaza, I don't think is a credible or realistic proposal at all.
Trump's plan has been widely rejected internationally, with critics saying it would amount to a campaign of ethnic cleansing. However, Israeli officials have overwhelmingly embraced the proposal, calling it, quote, a bold initiative. Just today, Israel ordered its military to prepare a plan for Palestinians to voluntarily leave the enclave and move to other countries. Bruce Reginald Foster III is being held on a $20 million bond as he now faces an additional murder charge today. A second victim has died in the hospital, that happening overnight. Foster is accused of shooting 6 co-workers at the KCD1 Cosmetics facility in New Albany, Ohio. That happening on Tuesday night. 4 victims remain in the hospital. 911 calls reveal that one of the co-workers was able to take the gun from the shooter, possibly saving more lives.
You gave the firearm to your shift lead.
Yeah, I took away from that, but I ended up getting shot.
Okay, is anybody there with you that can hold pressure on your wound?
And we are also learning that twice in 2022, Foster's family members called police reporting that he was experiencing delusions and paranoia and spoke of gun violence. His mother even said she feared for her own safety. No actions were taken after either of those calls. Tonight, 3 DOD contractors and a U.S. Marine are dead after an aircraft on a Defense Department mission crashed in the Philippines, killing all 4 on board. The mission was reportedly routine and in support of U.S.-Philippine security cooperation efforts. Names of the crew have not yet been released as the cause of the crash is investigated. An obsolete computer system used by air traffic controllers. That's where President Donald Trump is seemingly placing some of the blame 1 week after a deadly collision of a passenger jet and an Army helicopter right outside of Washington's Reagan National Airport. This morning at the National Prayer Breakfast, Trump said changes were coming.
We're all going to sit down and do a great computerized system for our control towers. Brand new, not pieced together, obsolete like it is land-based, trying to hook up a land-based system.
President Trump says it appears a lot of mistakes happened, also mentioning possible pilot error after it was discovered the helicopter was flying 100 feet higher than is permitted. Meantime, salvage crews could be seen today pulling out pieces of the Army Black Hawk helicopter involved. Both the FAA and the NTSB provided a closed-door briefing on the crash to senators earlier today. President Trump signing another round of executive orders today, including new sanctions against the International Criminal Court. National correspondent Atral Nashar has a closer look at that and what came from an hours-long meeting with Republicans who are struggling to come up with a plan to pass major legislation.
Another day with more executive orders coming from the new Trump White House. One making major headlines Thursday, new sanctions against the International Criminal Court for its investigations into U.S. and Israeli personnel and its arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump has done this before.
As far as America is concerned, the ICC has no jurisdiction, no legitimacy, and no authority.
During the first Trump administration, the president imposed sanctions on top ICC officials. Then, when President Biden took office, he removed those sanctions with an executive order. And when Trump took office again last month, that executive order was rescinded. So Thursday's sanctions weren't entirely surprising to top ICC prosecutor Karim Khan, who said this 2 weeks ago.
We don't go after anybody. We follow the law. We have, and the judges of the ICC decided before I was elected, that we had jurisdiction in the Palestine state case.
Earlier in the day, the president spent hours in a closed-door meeting with House Republicans strategizing their push for either 1 or 2 large bills on border security, defense, and tax policies that include
No tax on tips, which is obviously a very public campaign promise that the president made. No tax on seniors' Social Security. No tax on overtime pay. Renewing President Trump's 2017 middle-class tax cuts.
Time is not on their side. In mid-March, current government funding runs out. And with Republicans holding such slim majorities in the House and Senate, they'll need Democratic support to pass any spending package.
I don't see many Democrats being willing to say, hey, we're going to pass a budget that is going to just funnel money to Elon Musk.
Now, Republicans in the Senate are really growing impatient with House Republicans' lack of action on spending legislation, so they are expected to start with plans of their own and meet with the president at Mar-a-Lago tomorrow night.
And Atra, what more do we know about Senate Republican plans at this point?
Well, the biggest difference between what Republicans in the Senate and Republicans in the House want to do is how many bills they want to use to get all of these legislative agendas through. So border, defense, energy, and spending cuts and tax policy through. That is a lot, by the way. That's what a president might want to do in an entire administration. The Senate wants to break it up into multiple bills. The House Republicans want to do it in one bill, as the president would say, one big, beautiful bill. Now, the president himself says he doesn't care how many they do it. He just wants to see it all done, and very, very soon. But it's really important to point out the legislative experience that we're seeing with House Speaker Mike Johnson, who's only been in Congress a few years, and Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Senate Budget Committee Chair Lindsey Graham, who have been doing this for decades. They know they need 60 votes in the Senate, which would require 7 Democrats or 6 Democrats, depending if the VP is voting, to get something through. So they know they have to be diplomatic here as far as getting Democrats on board. House Republicans are dealing with an entirely different beast. So you've got 2 completely different dynamics. And every day we are talking about this, they're running out of time before that mid-March deadline, before the government runs out of funding.
Yeah, the question, can they come to a consensus? We will find out very soon. Atra El-Nashar, thank you so much for that report out of D.C. A federal judge in Seattle has indefinitely halted President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. The judge had already questioned the constitutionality of the directive and was deciding if it should be paused longer. Trump wants to end automatic citizenship for children born in the U.S. to illegal immigrant parents. 22 states and some organizations have filed lawsuits. A new NCAA policy bans biological males from competing in women's sports. The governing organization for college sports announced just today, following President Trump's No Men in Women's Sports executive order. The old policy from 2010, that one let men compete if they did a year of testosterone suppression treatment. Women can still compete on men's teams. President Trump also wants to prevent transgender athletes from competing in women's events at the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. Under the new executive order, the Secretary of State can pressure the International Olympic Committee to change its policies to support eligibility based on sex as opposed to gender identity. Anti-Trump demonstrators are making their voices heard again today following protests in cities across the country yesterday. Protesters marched to Republican Senator John Cornyn's office in San Antonio, Texas, today demanding accountability against DOGE leader Elon Musk's, quote, growing unelected influence. Yesterday, thousands of people protested President Trump's policies on topics like immigration, restructuring of government, and the Middle East. New video released by the U.S. Marine Corps shows Marines deploying barbed wire along the southern border wall. The Defense Department says they're working to beef up physical barriers to further halt illegal border crossings. The department sent an additional 1,500 active duty service members to the border on top of the more than 2,500 active duty troops and National Guardsmen already there. The new Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited the border earlier this week to see how things were doing.
The morale of our military is sky high for 2 key reasons. It's incredible. First of all, it's the Donald Trump effect. It's the President Trump effect. They want to serve under a commander-in-chief they know will have their backs. That's number 1. And number 2, they're defending our homeland.
Coming up, over 100 million Americans are dealing with severe winter weather today, where several more inches of snow are forecast tonight. Then NFL referees are accused of favoring the Kansas City Chiefs. How the league is responding and why experts say we've seen this before. Then Utah could become the next state to remove fluoride from its water supply. What people on both sides of the debate are saying. We'll be right back. Right now, heavy rain over much of California, as well as snow in Northern California and in Oregon. On the East Coast, meantime, snow expected for the rest of the night in Maine, with up to 1.5 feet near Vermont. This as more than 100 million Americans across at least 22 states were impacted today by winter storms of freezing rain, sleet, and snow from much of the morning into the afternoon. The worst of it has now passed. In some areas, they are dealing with heavy power outages at the moment. Take a look right here. Virginia, the worst hit, had more than 60,000 outages earlier today, still with just under 27,000 customers in the dark, according to poweroutage.us. West Virginia and Washington also had more than 10,000 outages earlier today, but both states have now fewer than 5,000 customers without power. The weather also creating travel disruptions. More than 4,600 flights delayed today into or out of the United States. Another 585 flights canceled altogether. Southern California Edison, one of the utility companies that services Los Angeles County, says its equipment may have ignited the Hearst fire that broke out in January. This wildfire sparked the same day as the deadly Palisades and Eaton fires, but was far less destructive than those two. The LA Fire Department is also investigating whether another SoCal Edison transmission line could have sparked the Eaton fire. The utility company says there is no evidence to support that claim right now. Meanwhile, Governor Gavin Newsom on CNN today speaking about a blueprint on a timeline to rebuild.
The need to get the debris removed. 30 days to do the hazardous waste. We want to get 6 to 9 months, the rest of the debris done. Concurrently, people are getting permits. So this is all happening, rolling together, and we want to see construction very shortly. And in the next few years, we want to see hundreds, thousands of homes rebuilt.
Applications for jobless benefits rose last week. New data out of the Labor Department shows that claims rose by 11,000 to 219,000, above what experts were expecting. Despite the increase, overall unemployment ticked down to 4.1%. Now, if you're a skater, surfer, or snowboarder, chances are you know the brands Quicksilver, Billabong, and Volcom. Today, the brick and mortar shops for those brands shut down, affecting 100 U.S. locations. Their parent company says they were underperforming, pointing to inflationary pressures and consumer spending shifting online. The clothes will still be sold online and in certain department stores, but the brands will be transferred to a new operator. The former interpreter for LA Dodgers player Shohei Ohtani has been sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in prison and 3 years supervised release for bank and tax fraud. Ippei Mizuhara stole almost $17 million from the Japanese baseball star's bank account, taking advantage of Ohtani's language barrier. Do NFL referees favor the Kansas City Chiefs? That's a question taking over Super Bowl 59. Players are being asked, and so is League Commissioner Roger Goodell, who called the allegations, quote, ridiculous. But a few controversial calls earlier in the playoff season that went in the Chiefs' favor have only fueled those conspiracies. The National News Desk's Jeff Harris reports.
In the divisional game against Houston, penalties caused the uproar. In the AFC Championship game, it was a failed fourth down conversion stirring up trouble. Now, some say the refs are biased towards the Chiefs, but the league says that's simply not true.
With Super Bowl 59 festivities officially underway in New Orleans, the attention is shifted from the teams playing to the referees. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell being asked directly, do the refs favor Kansas City?
That's a ridiculous theory for anyone who might take it seriously.
The Chiefs are looking to make history as the first team in the Super Bowl era to win 3 straight Lombardis. But some say the refs are favoring KC. First in Houston during the divisional round with a pair of roughing the passer calls.
That's the second penalty now that's been called against the Texans.
And then in the AFC Championship game, when during this pivotal fourth down, Bills quarterback Josh Allen was ruled short. The NFL Referees Association releasing a statement saying, quote, it is insulting and preposterous to hear conspiracy theories that somehow 17 officiating crews consisting of 138 officials are colluding to assist one team. Michael Lewis, a sports analytics expert and author, says These theories are nothing new. We've seen this throughout the history of sports.
LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, they might get a little bit softer treatment from the referees.
But with the rise of social media, it's more on display. And when your team keeps winning, everyone wants to see you fail.
When you become a top 5 team like the Cowboys or the Steelers or the Packers, you got a lot of fans, but you also have a lot of haters. It's just how the league works.
Now, the NFL Referees Association went on to say that on every down, officials both on the field and in the replay booth are doing everything they can to officiate each play correctly. Kansas City is favored to beat the Eagles on Sunday. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
All right, Jeff, thank you. And coming up, why a high school principal in Kentucky supports her school district's plan to start its own police department. We're back in 90 seconds. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Kentucky, where a school district plans to start its own police department.
There are more than 500 students in Martin County High School, and the principal, Dr. Michelle Harless, is responsible for their safety. She says it would be reassuring to have a full-time school resource officer at the school.
They could develop a rapport with a police officer and not have this preconceived notion that the police are against them. It could help us, take care of situations quickly.
And will these people have arrest powers?
Yes.
Martin County School Superintendent Larry James says the process of creating a police department is just beginning. He is gathering policies, procedures, and job descriptions from other school districts who have their own police force.
Riverton Mayor Trent Stagg says once the fluoride amendments bill passes, he's turning off the tap on fluoride.
Purported benefits of injecting it into the water stream are really not proven in my view.
Stagg says he wants to give people a choice and that there are options available for anyone who still wants fluoride for dental health. Riverton is the first city to show support for the bill by voting on it.
Do you feel other cities should follow suit?
100%.
The city's Facebook post announcing the news sees support for both sides of the issue. But what does a dentist think?
Is this a good idea?
I would say no.
He tells me if fluoride goes, families may see an uptick in cavities.
Have you ever stepped outside after fresh snow and noticed the world feels quieter? Almost like Mother Nature has turned the volume down. The lack of sound isn't just in your head. There's a science behind it.
So when you get lots of snowflakes with like the circle and the pointy spokes like you make in kindergarten, those tend to have a lot of air in between them. And so when freshly fallen snow falls and like it kind of falls and there's those gaps in between them, that helps absorb the sound, which makes it travel less.
The silence is most often noticeable in the morning. As the day goes on, with cars and footsteps compacting the snow, those tiny air pockets shrink, allowing sound to travel farther.
An exciting Super Bowl rematch awaits us on Sunday, but as we know, it's not all about the football. It's also about that highly anticipated halftime show. This year, Kendrick Lamar, fresh off 2 Grammy wins this past weekend, will become the first solo hip-hop artist to headline the show. Today, Lamar said he plans to infuse his LA hip-hop flavor into New Orleans, all while staying true to his roots. He'll also be joined by R&B singer-songwriter SZA, who he collaborated with on the song All the Stars. He's expected to take the stage at around 8 p.m. Eastern. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.